What's going on, everyone? It's the 20th of March, 2024. Welcome back to this, the 70th edition of the Superstream. My name is Derek, author of the original Gematrinator calculator that I created back in 2017, when I first truly harnessed my fascination with the world of numerology, astrology, synchronicity, and other occulted topics, which led me to make videos like this. So thanks for joining me. We have a packed Superstream for you today. 6 decodes from the past week. We'll kick things off by talking about John Cena, who turned a lot of heads at the Academy Awards last week by presenting the award for Best Costume Design in his birthday suit. We'll explain the numerology of his appearance on that show and why he was chosen on the 50th anniversary of a streaker at the Oscars. Yesterday, 2 different news stories broke about deaths of former NHL players. First, we'll discuss the death of Konstantin Koltsov, a man drafted by and played for the Penguins, dead at the age of 42. And then just a couple hours later, we learned about the death of another NHL player, Chris Simon. We'll take a look at how his passing connects to the code of Jesus. Also, fitness influencers Baxter and Thievin, dead in a Houston car crash. We'll explore the numerology that connects this pair, who worked for an industry named, or a company called Echo Vision, and how their numerology connects to Houston and the date they died. A couple of weeks ago, we had a plane crash in Nashville, Tennessee, claiming the life of businessman Viktor Dotsenko and his family. And then finally, we're going to talk about a story that's local in my region, but has started getting national attention as the tale of this missing boy named Elijah Vue has been discussed from Two Rivers, Wisconsin. And we'll look at how that also has alarming synchronicity connected to this JFK code that I've been discussing, especially since the Vincent Kennedy McMahon sex trafficking allegations that came up a couple of months ago. So let's kick things off by chatting about John Cena, legendary WWE pro wrestler, who essentially showed up to the Oscars dressed like an Oscar statue, wearing no clothes. Now, some people I've heard call this a humiliation ritual, which I'm not really sure I'm on board with, as Cena has spent more time on national television in his underwear than virtually anybody on the planet. So I don't think that this was that humiliating for him. However, we will dive into the numerology and explain why John Cena, for his April 23rd birthday, was chosen for this. The entire reason Cena went on stage nude was because this year was the 50th anniversary of the 46th Academy Awards. And this was a very controversial episode of the Oscars, as during the episode, a man named Robert Opel ran on stage completely naked and flashed the audience during one of the award presentations. It's appropriate that I kick this story off for Superstream 70, using the standard alphabetic order, which is a numeric cipher that applies a numerical value to every letter of the alphabet, 1 through 26, relative to its position. This is the most basic, frequent, and simple to understand cipher. It can also be reversed to produce a complementary method called reverse gematria. Now, if this was the only cipher, ordinal, things might be a little bit too simple. So we also introduced the reduction or Pythagorean forms, which use the rules of numerology to reduce every double-digit number to a single digit prior to adding it to the equation. There's also 2 large number methods that I focus on primarily in my videos. And we start with Latin Gematria, a cipher which uses the classical Latin alphabet with more modern English characters placed at the end. And this is a denary cipher, numbering the letters 1 through 9, 10 through 90, and 100 through 900. This is very similar to the standard method, which uses the current 26-letter alphabet, but uses the same numerical structure. Now, we'll peek at a couple of other different ciphers as we go, but these are the main ones. And when you compare this language to dates on the calendar, you quickly understand that something very bizarre is going on in this world. This year's Academy Awards were held on the 70th day of the year. Using the alphabetic order, the name John Cena sums to 70. Again, kicking off Superstream number 70. And, by the way, another happy 70th birthday to my father, who turned that age last week. So let's talk about the numbers that John Cena shares with this streaker, Robert Opel, whose name used to have two P's, but he changed it as apparently he didn't want to be associated with his own family. Well, in the language of Gematria, the phrase streaker Robert Opel gives us an ordinal value of 223. In this same ordinal method, John Felix Anthony Cena, his full name, also sums to 223. This also holds true in the Latin ordinal method. Now, at the 46th Academy Awards, when Robert Opel took the stage in the nude, this happened 3 years and 22 days before John Cena was born, which is the inverse, of course, of 223. Those who have been following my channel, especially over the past year, know that this pairing of numbers has been of utmost significance for the past year and a half, as Yale, turning 322 years old, home of Order 322, the Skull and Crossbones Society. Well, when Cena stood nude in front of the world, he was 322 days after his birthday. So here's a perfect example of how all of these actors play on the world stage by this numeric code. In the reduction or Pythagorean form, Academy Awards sums to 46. And it was the 46th Academy Awards when the streaker ran on stage. When Cena stood on stage naked, he was exactly 46 years and 46 weeks old. In the nude equals 46 in reduction. However, this was also 44 days before his next birthday. And in the alphabetic order, the word nude equals 44. Nude on stage, 44 in reduction. In the nude, also 44, reverse reduction. And curiously enough, Robert Opel passed away a couple years after Cena was born. And it's been 44 years since Robert's death. In standard Gematria, the name John Cena sums to 187. Now, the number 187 is very intriguing in numerology, as it's really the only number to have the same prime factors, 1117, as its prime relationship. Notice how the 187th prime number is 1117. Well, if you measure from the date that Robert Opel ran naked at the Oscars to the date of John Cena's birth, you get 1117 days. If you include the end date, this is also a span of 1118 days. John Cena streaker sums to 1118 in Latin. There's a couple more syncs between these men. In reverse, the name Cena equals 85. Robert Opel died 805 days after Cena was born, and he streaked on stage in the year 74. The word streak equals 74 in ordinal. Also notice how the name John Felix Anthony Cena and John Cena in reduction both match streaker 97 and 34 in Gematria. Cena's full name also matches Robert in Latin, 317. But really, I mean, 46 years and 46 weeks old at the Academy Awards, when it was the 46th awards, when the guy ran on stage nude. You see how these things are clearly set up and staged by the hidden hand operating behind the scenes. Next up, we take to the ice, where yesterday we learned that former Pittsburgh Penguin Konstantin Koltsov, who played with the team for several years in the early aughts, has passed away at the age of 42, and I believe they're claiming that he took his own life, as they put this suicide hotline here. Of course, on this channel, we simply question everything and look at things through the numbers, but also propose the question if there's lies underneath these stories in the media. And it's very odd that this happened, the same day that we learned about the death of Chris Simon, but we'll get there next. For this part of the decode, we're going to talk about how the death of Koltsov connects to the numerology of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pittsburgh was first awarded an NHL franchise on February 8th, 1966. This is the date we'll be primarily focusing on throughout this decode. Now, February 8th is written 208 here in the United States. The name Konstantin Koltsov equals 208 in reverse. Now, you'll notice that the Pittsburgh Penguins currently have 1,819 losses. Well, they just picked up their 1,819th last night. At the time of Koltsov's death, the Penguins had a total of 1,818 losses. So why is this interesting for this story? Well, first of all, in reduction gematria, Pens, the team's nickname, sums to 18 in both reduction and reverse. Konstantin Koltsov was the 18th overall pick of the 1999 draft. And when he died on the 18th day of the month, notice how that date also had numerology of 18. 18 is the sum of 6 plus 6 plus 6. And this brings us to the next part of the riddle, as Koltsov was drafted in the year 1999, which has an upside-down 666. And he would have also been 18 years old when he was drafted. In reverse Sumerian gematria, the Sumerian methods simply use the alphabetic order but multiply everything by 6, the first perfect number, and the number most closely associated with time. Penguins has gematria of 666. Koltsov was from modern-day Belarus, which also equals 666. And remember earlier I pointed out that the Penguins were founded in the year 66, which means when they drafted Koltsov, they were 33 years old. In reduction, the number 33 sums to 66 and 60. Also notice the 156, just like 666 or triple sixes. So there's a strong number of the beast code here as well. And in the King James Bible, it's Revelation 13:18 that reveals the number of the beast. Notice how several phrases from this Bible verse have gematria values of 66 in reduction. Perhaps you could say this is shorthand for 666. Koltsov was the boyfriend of Belarusian tennis star Arina Sabalenka. Notice how his death fell 6 weeks and 6 days before the birthday of Sabalenka, whose last name sums to 66 in ordinal. News of his death was not published until the following day, the 19th. This year, March 19th, had primary numerology of 66. Notice how Sabalenka was also born in the year 1998. Well, when you take the third multiple of 666, you find that it's 1998. By the way, this all ties into the next decode I'll be doing as well with Chris Simon. Notice how the name Chris Simon equals 999, and the phrase in the headline, sorely missed, gives us 666 Gematria. Chris Simon died 6 weeks and 6 days after his birthday. And he was a winner of the 1996 Stanley Cup. Of course, the 9 is just the upside down 6, so 1996. Can also be construed to represent the triple sixes. When Konstantin Koltsov died, as well as Chris Simon, notice how that date had 65 numerology. Well, Koltsov died in Miami, Florida. And both Miami, Florida, and Florida sum to 65 in Gematria. But check this out. When you write out the number of the beast as it's laid out in the King James Bible, 666, you get an ordinal value of the 65th prime number. 313, the 65th prime. In Latin Gematria, this phrase sums to 1610. In standard Gematria, Konstantin Koltsov equals 1610. Also, in Satanic Gematria, a cipher which is appropriate here, as this method is completely constructed around the number 666. Well, in this method, the phrase sums to 1223, and when Koltsov died, it was 21,223 days after the Penguins were founded. Pittsburgh Penguins has matching 245 ordinal Gematria with his girlfriend's full name. In Latin, his girlfriend's full name reflects his birthday. Notice this 1740 in Latin. Konstantin Koltsov was born on the 17th of April, or 17/4. Sabalenka was born 11,774 days after the Penguins were founded, a number with the same 3 digits. When the Penguins drafted her boyfriend, she was 417 days old. 417, like how his April 17th birthday would be written here in the States. But more intriguing is that in ordinal, number of the beast sums to 174. In the reverse order, number of the beast equals 258. Koltsov's birthday leaves 258 days in the year. This also ties into the death of Chris Simon, who won a Stanley Cup with Colorado in their very first season in Denver. Notice how Colorado equals 258. And Chris Simon was part of the Eric Lindros trade. Eric Lindros trade equals 258. More on that in a little bit. Koltsov died 4 weeks and 2 days before his birthday. And that stands out because Koltsov was just 42 years old when he died. In the book of Revelation, the beast rules for 42 months. Notice how his only NHL team, Penguins, equals 42. Hockey, 402 in Sumerian. Koltsov also retiring 2,669 days after his, or before his death. A little more 666 for you, but what's also very prevalent here is the sacrifice code, and these numbers also tie into the death of Chris Simon, which again happened on the very same day. Konstantin Koltsov sums to 251 like ritual sacrifice. In reverse, 251. Ritual sacrifice also equals 107, and Koltsov was born on the 107th day of the year. Koltsov's full name has Gematria of 3911. His girlfriend's full name Also with Gematria of 911 with capital letters taken into account. The CAPS mixed cipher maintains the alphabetic order, but mixes capitals and small letters together. 911 is the phrase of ritual human sacrifice, and would you believe this? If you measure from the birthday of Konstantin Koltsov to the birthday of Chris Simon, we find that they were born exactly 9 years and 11 weeks apart from one another. Of course, the name Christopher means Christ bearer, and the date 9/11, September 11th, is when many people believe Jesus was actually born. In fact, notice how the name Christopher J. Simon, his full listed name here, also sums to 912, which, according to some Masonic literature, can still represent 9/11 through the rule of Kollel. Koltsov's KK initials, the 11th letter, K11. Well, if you multiply 11 times 11, you get a product of 121. Koltsov was born on a date with 121 numerology, played his NHL career in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 121. This is also the value of blood sacrifice in ordinal, 121. In the Latin method, blood sacrifice equals 332. Koltsov retired on the 332nd day of a leap year in 2016, and then when he passed away, it was exactly 3,032 weeks after the Penguins' founding date back in '66. Also notice how his death on 3/18 was 318 days after his girlfriend's birthday. And this came up again in my decode on Chris Simon because Simon died 318 days before his birthday on the exact same date, March 18th or 3/18. So once again, this story about Chris Simon broke just hours after we learned about the death of Konstantin Koltsov. And it's rare to hear about an NHL player dying young, much less two of them on the exact same day. Now, this passing is loaded with Jesus Christ numerology. Of course, we have a man named Christopher, which means Christ bearer. And as Jesus was on his way to the crucifixion, he got help carrying the cross from a man named Simon of Cyrene. So we also have the J middle initial, same as Jesus. He was also born on January 30th, or 1/30, and the initials for Jesus Christ, JC, sum to 13. The name Chris Simon also is a supermatch with the word sacrifice. His common and full names both sum to 477 in various methods. Well, if you were to use prime numbers, one of the several mathematical ciphers that I consider to be fairly significant, all of these maintaining the alphabetic order, but with associated prime numbers, ritual sacrifice also this 477. Former teammate Joe Sakic says, Simon will be sorely missed. This is a phrase with gematria of 666 in Fibonacci numbers. This cipher on the bottom right here, using the first 13 Fibonacci numbers forwards and backwards. In trigonal, another one of those mathematical methods, Chris Simon sums to 999, and again, he was a winner of the 1996 Stanley Cup. Just like Koltsov, news of Simon's death broke on a date with 66 numerology, dead 6 weeks and 6 days after his birthday. It's believed that Jesus was crucified in the year 33 at the age of 33. Well, notice how 33 sums to 66, the first multiple of 33. Chris Simon was born 3,366 days before Konstantin Koltsov. Konstantin Koltsov has matching 156 Gematria with 33. And the number 911, which we talked about earlier, that's the 156th prime number. Next up, we'll look at a significant riddle with lunar eclipses and the moon. First off, the name Chris Simon sums to 143 in reverse. And Simon died 10,143 days after winning the Stanley Cup. That cup victory was their first season in Colorado. And the Avalanche got their name on the 143rd, the date leaving 143 days in the calendar. When Colorado got its new name for the Avalanche, this happened on August 10th of 95. And check out the Brown lunation number, 898. This was actually during a full moon when they got their name. Chris Simon was 8,898 days when he won the Stanley Cup. And on that same date, Konstantin Koltsov was 5,533 days. Well, the Pittsburgh Penguins were awarded a franchise during Brown lunation 533. In Latin Gematria, the phrase lunar eclipse sums to 533. And isn't it interesting that Chris Simon, born on 1/30 of 1972, was born on the same date as a total lunar eclipse? This lunar eclipse belonged to Saros Series 133. Colorado equals 133 reverse. Lunar and eclipse both 33. It's believed that Jesus was crucified on the date of a lunar eclipse. Chris Simon was 133 days after his birthday when he won the Stanley Cup. And in other methods, both Christopher and sacrifice sum to 133. So speaking of Colorado, summing to 133, we already looked at the 258, but what about the ordinal and reduction values? First off, notice how in Hebrew, the word for moon sums to 38, and with capital letters, moon equals 83. Konstantin Koltsov died in Florida, which equals 38. Chris Simon played for Colorado, which equals 38 and 83. And when both of these men died, the NHL was 38,830 days old. The National Hockey League, founded on November 26th, 1917. So measuring from that date to yesterday, you get the 3883. And what else equals 38 and 83? How about the word murder? 38 and 83. In the alphabetic order, murder equals 79. Chris Simon was the winner of the Stanley Cup to cap off the NHL's 79th season. And when news of him and Koltsov's death broke, it was the 79th day of the year. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Looks like we got a couple of new folks here. And yeah, my buddy sends an email blast out occasionally. So people who have signed up for the website, get alerts. And the reason we do that is because YouTube has proven that they do not very frequently alert people to my videos. So if you're wondering who I am, well, I'm Derek. Hello. Author and webmaster of Gematrinator.com. Made the website back in 2017. After I did find Zach Hubbard's work back then, kind of introduced me to Gematria, inspired me to look for myself. And, you know, as a skeptic, I was very hesitant to believe this language of Gematria could be relevant. So it wasn't until I created my own spreadsheets and really started doing my own studying where I realized that this code was far more fascinating than I could have ever imagined. And through connections to astronomy, astrology, and the eclipse code, which we'll look at pretty shortly, there's a whole new world that opened up to me, and a very fascinating world of numerology that I hope to share with my subscribers who seem to share or have a similar interest in this amazing world we live in. And you know, occasionally I do get comments telling me that, you know, a lot of people see numerology and they instantly think that there's something dark, spiritual going on here. We are living in a spiritually devoid world compared to what it used to be. And a lot of people have no understanding that there is a presence that is guiding things along in this world. That everybody has a purpose here. We're all placed here by some method. And this code of Gematria is the method that shows that proves that. So I understand there's a lot of different theories on it. A lot of people think it's spooky, but to me, it's really, there couldn't be anything more fascinating about the world that we live in than this. Next up, in Houston, Texas, early on in March, fitness influencers Baxter and Thievin were killed in a fatal car wreck. And in updates I've seen since then, it sounds like they were driving over 100 miles an hour. So definitely some reckless behavior going on, but tragic and sad nonetheless. And as it turns out, this happened completely by the numbers. And both of these men from Houston, apparently, dead in the city of Houston. So we're going to do a little deep dive and see how their numerology connects to the same numbers of Houston itself. The names Baxter and Thievin, when added together, match accident, by the way. So all of this is connected to the number 62 and Houston, Texas. Notice how the number 62 sums to 181 with capital letters, just like Houston, Texas in ordinal, which also gives us 62 reverse reduction. One of the two men killed in this crash was named Baxter Hosley. And notice how his name also sums to 1801, like 181, and 62. Baxter Hosley was born 1 year, 8 months, and 10 days after fellow influencer Thievin. This is also 620 days when you measure between these dates. City of Houston equals 62, a number we commonly see in stories of early demise. Sacrifice equals 62. Now, the other man who died, Thievin, or Garrett McDonough, now his name does not equal 62. However, Garrett McDonough has matching gematria with 62 and 620. This 233 also found in the value of Houston, Texas. All right, so next up, Houston, Texas. The date of incorporation. Notice how Houston came into existence officially on June 5th of 1837. Measuring from June 5th to the date of this crash was 279 days, matching TikTok in Latin. TikTok, the platform that both of these influencers gained most of their following through. And also a company that's kind of on the chopping block in the United States government lately. Houston's June 5th anniversary is the 156th day of the year. And using ordinal, Houston, Texas sums to 156 when abbreviated. On the date he died, Baxter Hosley was exactly 1,156 weeks old. Baxter and Thievin equals 156 in Sumerian. But when you add their common names together, Baxter, Hosley, Garrett, McDonough, you get 1156 Fibonacci. The car crash also fell 156 days before the birthday of John Whitmire, who was the current mayor of Houston. Both men worked for a company called Echo Vision, which equals 156, with capital letters. Notice how Houston, Texas is currently 186 years old. Well, in Sumerian Gematria, Houston, Texas equals 1,086. A city that's 186 years old. Well, check this out. If you look at the 1,086th prime number, 8713, Thievin died at the age of 8,713 days old. Thievin was born 223 days after Houston's anniversary. With capital letters, Houston equals 223. Houston, Texas equals 309 with capital letters. And the pair died 309 days before his next birthday. When you add both their common names, you get an ordinal value of 309, just like 62 with capital letters, 309. But there's even more. Houston's 6-5 date connects back to 313, as I explained earlier. 313, the 65th prime number. This crash was 313 days after Thievin's birthday and 87 days before Houston's anniversary. Well, notice how Thievin, Houston, Texas, and 62 all sum to 87, much like car crash in Sumerian, 870. A couple more alignments here is that, we're talking about the number 62. Well, on the first day of the new year, the 62nd mayor of Houston stepped down from his role. January 1st. His name, Sylvester Turner, sums to the 62nd prime number, but it also equals 70 in reduction. And this duo died a span of 70 days after he left office on the 70th day of the year. Mayor of Houston equals 70, and one of the men, Baxter, his handle online sums to 70 in ordinal. The two men were also born 20 months, 11 days apart. They died 211 days after the mayor's birthday. Ritual human sacrifice equals 211, which is the 47th prime, and the mayor's name, John, equals 47. Baxter's name also matches sacrifice and ritual sacrifice. So, shout out to one of my commenters who asked about this story after my last video. I had never heard of these guys, as I got all the muscle I need. No, I'm kidding, but indeed, like anything on the news that gets a lot of attention, heavy numeric riddles to be uncovered. All right, so next up, back on March 4th, the fourth day of the third month, 4/3, there was a plane crash in Nashville, Tennessee. In reduction, the phrase plane crash equals 43. The city of Ontario also equals 43. And Ontario was the home of Viktor Dotsenko, who, along with his wife and 3 kids, passed away in this tragic plane crash. Viktor Dotsenko was born in the year 1980. We don't have an exact birthday, just the year. Well, notice how his name, Viktor Dotsenko, and Interstate 40, where this crash occurred, both have gematria of 190 and 80. So let's take a close look at this photo that Fox News gave us of the crash site. Here we see the airplane after its unfortunate demise. And the news agency conveniently showed mile marker 202 placed between the lens and the scene of the crash. Here's another picture with some traffic info with the radio the radio station listed there. And the reason I'm showing you guys these pictures is because if you go on Google Earth and find out where this is, you can see that it happened on this hill right here, mile 202, with the traffic info and radio station right there next to it. And if you zoom out of this, you find that there's a Costco right here. This plane crash literally happened in the backyard of a Costco. So I need to explain how the numerology of Costco is connected to this. First of all, the number 202, which we see right here in the picture. In Latin ordinal, Nashville, Tennessee equals 202. So does the phrase ritual human sacrifice. In the alphabetic order, total solar eclipse also equals 202. And we're going to look at how this connects to the eclipse code, as back in 2017, Nashville saw a total solar eclipse pass directly overhead. Now, before I talk about that eclipse, there was another eclipse in October of last year, an annular eclipse over the southwestern United States. This crash happened 142 days after that annular eclipse. Now, what's special about that? Well, the 142nd prime number is 821. The date of the eclipse over Nashville was August 21st, or 8/21. This plane crash in Nashville was 8,210 days after the plane crashes on 9/11. That's right, September 11th, 2001 to this crash, 8,210 days. Furthermore, this crash was also 821 days after the most recent total solar eclipse, which happened back in December of 2021. But check this out. Not only is this 821 days, but it's also 117 weeks and 3 days, like the digits 1173. Well, if you measure from 9/11 to the date of this plane crash, it was exactly 1173 weeks later. And in the reverse alphabetic order, plane crash equals 173. Costco equals 173 with capital letters. But what really stands out about this 173 is that this is the 40th prime number. This plane crash happened right alongside Interstate 40, right outside of Nashville. Interstate 40. Measuring back to 9/11, we also get an exact number of lunar phases. This crash was 278 lunar phases after 9/11 exactly. In the reverse order, Nashville, Tennessee sums to 278. When you flip the digits 9/11 upside down, you get 116. Datsenko was from Ontario, Canada, which sums to 116 in ordinal. A significant number to the eclipse code is 612. Revelation 6:12 mentions both a solar and lunar eclipse. Not only was this plane crash 6 months and 12 days after the anniversary of the eclipse over Nashville, but it was also 6 months and 12 days before September 15th, which is the anniversary of Costco Wholesale. Costco Wholesale sums to 1165 in standard gematria. This plane crash in Nashville was 1165 days after the bombing in Nashville on Christmas Day back in 2020. And it's funny, I just mentioned the Nashville bombing in my last super stream. I talked about this with the AT&T outage. The Nashville bombing happened in front of an AT&T building. So it's interesting that we get a news story from Nashville right after I did that video. The Christmas Day bombing was from an RV, which equals 40, like the interstate number. The plane crash was also 166 weeks, or 1,166 days after the bombing. Well, 166 is the address of the AT&T building that was bombed. Like Twin Towers 166. And when you write out Interstate 40, it sums to 1166. Now, in my post, I'm not going to dive into this, but Costco was founded in the city of Issaquah, Washington. That's actually where its headquarters are. Issaquah. One of the cooler city names. And quite a beautiful landscape there in Issaquah. Well, Issaquah was also home to the band Modest Mouse. And last year, I did a video on the death of Modest Mouse drummer Jeremiah Green. And in my blog post, I noted a number of synchronicities that connect this story to the death of Jeremiah Green. Notice how Jeremiah Green was born on March 4th, which was the exact same day as this plane crash. This crash was 341 weeks exactly after the eclipse over Nashville. Jeremiah Green was born 341 weeks exactly before the founding of Costco in Issaquah. So there's some interesting stuff there. Not going to bore you more with that, but as always, my blog is linked down below in the description of this video, just like always. All right, guys, to wrap things up today, we're going to talk about this local news story out of the state of Wisconsin here, which, as I mentioned earlier, has started to get some national attention. And, you know, this story was going on for over 3 weeks. I never bothered to look at the numerology of it, even though I felt like something was strange about it. Now, as far as what's really going on here, I firmly believe at this point, after 7-8 years of research, that the eclipse code can very well be organic in nature as well. So what I'm showing here does not necessarily say this story was fake or there was something more nefarious behind the disappearance of this child, but you know, we live in a world in which tragedy has to happen. It seems like death, sadness, pain, these things are part of the life experience we have here on Earth. And these things are just as coded as any fake story you'll get out of the news. But with that being said, let's dive into the numbers here, because yesterday, or I'm sorry, on the 18th, we got an update on this story about Elijah Vue. And I thought it was strange that the key element of this story was his missing blanket. Apparently, police found a blanket that belonged to Elijah. Notice how the word blanket equals 65 ordinal and 20 reduction. And this story was published on a date with numerology of 65 and 20. So what's going on here? Now, think about the last name Vue. Well, next month, a large chunk of America will be viewing the total solar eclipse that passes over the United States. And this story is out of Wisconsin. And if you've been following my work recently, you noticed I've been talking about this connection with Wisconsin and John F. Kennedy. The state of Wisconsin was admitted to the Union on May 29th, exactly 69 years before the birth of JFK. And JFK was born during Brown lunation number -69. Measuring from the JFK assassination to the disappearance of Elijah Vue is exactly 60 years and 90 days. Elijah disappearing on February 20th. 60 years, 90 days. So this is the number that connects JFK to Wisconsin. If you measure from the 2017 Great American Eclipse to the disappearance of Elijah Vue, it was a span of exactly 78 months later. When we learned about the missing blanket being found, that was also the 78th day of the year. Well, in the alphabetic order, Kennedy equals 78. But check this out. When you write out disappearance of Elijah Vue, it sums to 1963, which is the year that Kennedy was assassinated. And if you measure from that date to the date of his disappearance on February 20th, you get a span of 22,006 days. Well, in ordinal, the disappearance of Elijah Vue sums to 226. Recently, I talked about the wild allegations against former WWE chairman Vince McMahon and how this was all a 666 riddle connected to JFK. As this story broke 60 years and 66 days after the Kennedy assassination. Janelle equals 666, so does sex trafficking 666. Kennedy McMahon 666, like Kennedy. Vincent Kennedy McMahon 666. We even had a wrestler nicknamed The Beast involved in this story, and he had an upside down 666 in his age. Well, in the WWE, there used to be a wrestler named Mr. Kennedy. And remember, Vince McMahon, his middle name is Kennedy. Vincent Kennedy McMahon. So he has this wrestler named Mr. Kennedy. And check out where Mr. Kennedy is from. He graduated high school from Two Rivers, Wisconsin. Well, Two Rivers is where Elijah Vue disappeared from. Now, Two Rivers, Wisconsin is a city of just 11,000 people. So this is quite the alarming coincidence, so to speak. Notice how the city of Two Rivers sums to 149 in ordinal. Wisconsin admitted on the 149th day of the year. JFK born on the 149th day as well. The name John Kennedy also matches Wisconsin in ordinal. The 2017 eclipse happened on the 233rd day of the year, matching John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The number 233 is the 51st prime number. Elijah Vue disappeared on the 51st day of the year. And the names Elijah Vue, as well as Jesse Vang, who I believe is his father, whose custody he was in, both their names equal 51. John Kennedy, 510 Satanic. This year's eclipse, 51 days before Kennedy's birthday, by the way. So back to Mr. Kennedy, who also wrestled under the name Two Rivers Jack at one point. Check out Wisconsin's age when Mr. Kennedy was born. Wisconsin was 6,666 weeks and 6 days old when Kennedy was born. This reminds us of how Vince McMahon turned 6,666 days old one day after the JFK assassination. The name Anderson equals 36 and 360. Think about how Anderson Cooper has AC 360. The name Elijah also equals 36 and 63. 63 like the year JFK died in. 6-3 can also be like the birthday of Mr. Anderson, Mr. Kennedy here. The 6th of March, or 6-3. That date can also be written as 36, and 666 is the 36th triangular number. JFK was born 3,600 weeks after Wisconsin was admitted to the Union. And then Mr. Kennedy was born 3,066 weeks later. In ordinal, the name Ken Anderson equals 120. Elijah Vue vanished 1 month and 20 days before the eclipse, which equals 120. The name Elijah Vue has matching 39 gematria with eclipse. Notice how Elijah Vue disappeared 3 months and 9 days before Kennedy's birthday, which is also Wisconsin's anniversary. Eclipse also equals 33, just like the names Vue and Kennedy. Well, on the date of next month's eclipse, Mr. Kennedy would be 48 years and 33 days old. And think about how the 48 connects to the date of the eclipse, April 8th, or 4/8. Elijah Vue disappeared 48 days before 4/8. And in ordinal, Vue equals 48. So does his father's name, Jesse Vang 48. And in reduction, the name Ken Anderson equals 48. And Ken Anderson was born 4,488 days after the JFK assassination. Earlier this month, Kennedy turned 48 years old. Elijah disappeared a span of 2 weeks and 2 days before his birthday, and this 22 is the number that brings us home here. Ken Anderson was born on a date with reduced numerology of 22, and he was billed as being from Green Bay, Wisconsin during his wrestling career. Well, notice how Green Bay, Wisconsin has matching 202 ordinal gematria with total solar eclipse. 3-year-old Elijah Vue was likely born in the year 2020, which was, of course, the year of the coronavirus pandemic, 220. And Elijah Vue went missing on the 20th of February, or 20/2. With capital letters. Elijah Vue equals 202. Jesse Vang equals 202. JFK was born 25,202 days after Wisconsin was admitted to the Union. And notice how Kennedy would have been 1,202 months old for the eclipse in 2017. The name John Kennedy equals 1202. And the state of Wisconsin, in Latin, sums to the 202nd prime number, 1231. Think about how the NFL team from Wisconsin, the Packers, they won Super Bowls 1, 2, and then 31. And Super Bowl 31 was played in New Orleans, which sums to 1231. There's more Kennedy sinks here as well. Mr. Kennedy was born exactly 12 lunar years and 8 months after John F. Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy equals 1208. It's been 1,280 months since JFK died. Kennedy died 177 days after his birthday. Eclipse of the sun equals 177. But how about the name Ken Anderson in reverse? This also sums to 177. And Elijah Vue was supposed to meet up with his mother again in Wisconsin Dells, which equals 177. So, man, it's just some bizarre numerology here with this story. I don't know the truth about what's going on, but I do know that the numerology and presence of this total eclipse next month over the United States seems to dictate a large chunk of the experience that we're having here in 2024, as well as many years before that as well. All right, guys, so we're just over 1 hour into this super stream, and yeah, we've covered all the stories we planned on seeing. Shout out to everybody in the chat who made it here. And I did take the rare step of blocking someone from the chat. And, you know, I try to be very clear when people ask that, you know, my take on Gematria is that this code, this language is far, far too complex for us measly, stupid human beings to be in charge of it. There is a force way greater than we are, a presence, a being, an entity that is helping to guide things along in this world. And I believe in God. I fear that God. It's really the only thing I fear in this world is the power of that, the utmost almighty. So to me, I laugh when I see people who go in the chat and say, I'm not godlike, or I'm against God. I'm secretly trying to pull people away from God. No, I'm trying to pull people closer to by showing you that this Gematria business, which, you know, to some degree has been framed as just a Freemasonic or Jesuit conspiracy, is actually indicative of something far more magical about our reality, showing that something more powerful than us is in control. And it's only logical that we take heed and, you know, recognize that that being is there. And people have different ways of worshiping, recognizing, whatever. I'm not here to tell you what to think or believe, but I am here to show you that there's more than what meets the eye when it comes to numerology, and we can't arrive at simple conclusions based on simple things we see. So yeah, thanks to all the love and everything, as always, from the chat, and the support as well. You know, it's been such a blessing for me to not only discover this code, but to learn that hundreds, if not thousands of others are just as fascinating and enumerated by this thing as I am. Because, like I said, it really caused me to drop everything in my life and try and get this type of knowledge to the forefront, because so many things have been hidden from us over the years. And I think it's time that we reverse that power structure, as knowledge itself is true power. All right, guys. With my 3 cents thrown in at the end, I thank everyone again for watching. Peace, love, God bless. If you'd love to support the work, please do so at the website. There's a link in the description. Something you can access at the top bar of the website. But yeah, that'll do it for today. We'll talk to you next time. See ya.